Section 1 of De Vulgari Eloquentia. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Anna Simon. De Vulgari Eloquentia by Dante Alighieri. Translated by Philip H. Wicksteed. Book 1, Chapter 1. Since we do not find that anyone before us has treated of the science of the vernacular language, while in fact we see that this language is highly necessary for all, inasmuch as not only men, but even women and children, strive, in so far as nature allows them, to acquire it, and since it is our wish to enlighten to some little extent the discernment of those who walk through the streets like blind men, generally fancying that those things which are really in front of them are behind them, we will endeavour, the word aiding us from heaven, to be of service to the vernacular speech, not only drawing the water of our own wit for such a drink, but mixing with it the best of what we have taken or compiled from others, so that we may thence be able to give draughts of the sweetest hydromel. But because the business of every science is not to prove but to explain its subject, in order that men may know what that is with which the science is concerned, we say, to come quickly to the point, that what we call the vernacular speech is that to which children are accustomed by those who are about them when they first begin to distinguish words. Or, to put it more shortly, we say that the vernacular speech is that which we acquire without any rule, by imitating our nurses. There further springs from this another secondary speech, which the Romans called grammar, and this secondary speech the Greeks also have as well as others, but not all. Few, however, acquire the use of this speech, because we can only be guided and instructed in it by the expenditure of much time and by assiduous study. Of these two kinds of speech also, the vernacular is the nobler, as well because it was the first employed by the human race, as because the whole world makes use of it, though it has been divided into forms differing in pronunciation and vocabulary. It is also the nobler as being natural to us, whereas the other is rather of an artificial kind, and it is of this our nobler speech that we intend to treat. Chapter 2. This, then, is our true first speech. I do not, however, say our, as implying that any other kind of speech exists beside man's, for to man alone of all existing beings was speech given, because for him alone was it necessary. Speech was not necessary for the angels or for the lower animals, but would have been given to them in vain, which nature, as we know, shrinks from neither doing. For if we clearly consider what our intention is when we speak, we shall find that it is nothing else but to unfold to others the thoughts of our own mind. Since then the angels have, for the purpose of manifesting their glorious thoughts, a most ready and indeed ineffable sufficiency of intellect, by which one of them is known in all respects to another, either of himself or at least by means of that most brilliant mirror in which all of them are represented in the fullness of their beauty, and into which they all most eagerly gaze, they do not seem to have required the outward indications of speech. And if an objection be raised concerning the spirits who fell, it may be answered in two ways. First, we may say that inasmuch as we are treating of those things which are necessary for well-being, we ought to pass over the fallen angels because they perversely refuse to wait for the divine care. Or secondly, and better, that the devils themselves only need, in order to disclose their perfidy to one another, to know each of another that he exists and what is his power, which they certainly do know, for they had knowledge of one another before their fall. The lower animals also, being guided by natural instinct alone, did not need to be provided with the power of speech, for all those of the same species have the same actions and passions, and so they are enabled by their own actions and passions to know those of others. But among those of different species, not only was speech unnecessary,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?